When we see the Apostle Paul speaking about the man of sin being revealed and sitting in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4, the argument has been made that, well, God is not honoring any man-made temple anymore, which is true. Acts 7:48 even proves that. So the temple of God that Paul has to be talking about is the people. So the idea has been put out there by me as well that Paul is actually referring to the man of sin in the temple, the Antichrist in the temple of God, us. Because 1 Corinthians 3:16 says that the believers are the temple of God now, after the physical temple was destroyed. Now, that is part of it, I believe, but I don't believe that Paul was actually referring to a man-made temple either. There is a third option to this that has not been talked about, and I'm going to show you guys it right now. So, when Paul talks about the man of sin sitting in the temple of God, and the argument comes up that God is not honoring any man-made temples, which is a good argument, which I made for a long time, we have to look a little deeper. Now, if we go to Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, we see the same instance being talked about. The man of sin, which is the abomination. And he is the abomination and he causes desolation. So he is talked about in Matthew 24:15, verse 15. And there's going to be a clue here so that we can figure out this mystery. And it says this: when ye therefore shall see the abomination, that's the Antichrist, the man of sin, of desolation. Now, of desolation, it also says that causes desolation. So it's a little better understanding when you see how it speaks and it says that causes desolation. And desolation is destruction. So the Antichrist causes destruction. That's what that's saying. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel, the prophet, stand in the holy place. It just gave us a clue. It told us, go back to Daniel and find out what the holy place is. You see, because Daniel spoke of this too. So let's go to the book of Daniel, and he does tell us that it's not the believers that's being talked about in 2 Thessalonians 2, and it's not a man-made temple being talked about. There's a third option here that people have not seen. And it's this. Daniel chapter 11. And I'm going to be starting at the end of the chapter at verse 44. Now it's talking about the man of sin, the Antichrist. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy. That's desolation. That's the abomination that causes desolation. He's going forth to destroy, to cause desolation. And utterly to make away many. Now here's the answer. Here is the third answer that not many know or understand or have been shown. And that is this. And he, the Antichrist, shall plant the tabernacles of his palace. Now here's a man-made temple, palace, between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. So what's holy here? It's Mount Moriah, the mountain that is the holy thing of God. You see? That's not man-made. That's not a man-made temple. God made the mountains. See that? And it's not the believers either. It's the mountain. See that? Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So there you have it. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, when God says, when Paul writes that the man of sin sets himself up in the temple of God, and the argument comes up, well, God isn't honoring any temples made with human hands, which is true. You have to go back to Daniel to find out what that is. It's the holy mountain of God, Mount Moriah. Man didn't make that. That's God's mountain. That's why the Antichrist puts his palace on it. Because Paul says he shows himself that he is God and he proclaims to be above all that is called God. See that? So that's the clue to this riddle. Now moving on to the next thing, we can actually see the timing of the rapture here, because the rapture resurrection is spoken about in Daniel chapter 12, in case you didn't know. And it's after the man of lawlessness sets himself up on the holy mountain. So this is after the man of sin is revealed, after the apostasy, just like Paul says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, just like Matthew chapter 24 says, and all these things. So for all the pre-tribulation rapture guys, sorry, but the Bible never ever says pre-tribulation rapture. It says pre-God's wrath rapture. This is not God's wrath. You see, when the abomination goes forth causing desolation, that's not God's wrath. That's not God doing that. That's these guys. So here we are in Daniel chapter 12. And at that time, now what time? After the man of lawlessness put his palace on the holy mountain and he's causing desolation. At that time, shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And that's exactly what Matthew 24, after verse 15 says. That after the man of sin is causing desolation, then there will be a time like there never was before, or there never will be after. And it's just the same exact thing as Daniel. And then it says this. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And this is 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. The dead in Christ rise first. And then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up in the cloud to meet the Lord in the air. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. So we see here that there is going to be great tribulation when we are raptured. At the time of our rapture, our departure, as some people call it, which is taken out of context again, and that's a whole other story. But at the time of our rapture, being caught up in the clouds, the man of sin will be revealed. We will see him. We will see great tribulation. But now remember, the greatest tribulation will be in the Middle East over there. At that place over there. Now it will be throughout the whole world. But it is going to be worse over there. It's like an earthquake. Where the earthquake is centered is the worst. But as it spreads out, it's not as bad. So I wanted to show you guys those two mysteries. They are very important, putting everything in the right time period. Now, one last thing I want to show you guys is something that I can totally see playing out right now because of all this pre-tribulation rapture stuff. And that is this. Matthew chapter 25, and it's starting at verse 47. Starting at verse 48. But, and if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Look at that. Why do you think that this verse is in here? That people are saying the Lord is delaying his coming. Because everybody is saying, oh, he's right around the corner. He's coming today. He's coming tomorrow. He's coming in a pre-tribulation rapture. That's that verse. All these people. It ain't going to happen this year. Probably won't happen next year. We have markers to show us around what we're looking for, so it will happen. That verse, I can see it. See it right now. When all this stuff starts happening even worse, this fake alien invasion and famine and pestilence and God knows what, and people are going to start saying, the Lord is delaying. Where is the promise of his coming? And all this pre-tribulation rapture idea stuff is going to cause that. I'm sure of it. Now showing you guys where the Antichrist is revealed. And I believe firmly that that will be in the year 2025. And 2025 ends up falling in the middle of this last 7-year period that we are in, called a Shemitah. It's a 7-year cycle. And so it's right in the middle, and a reason that makes a lot of sense is because we know in the book of Revelation that the Antichrist is given 42 months to continue until the end, which is 3.5 years. So 2025, right in the middle of the last 7 here, 3.5 years would be around 2029, which is the end of the 7-year cycle. So that's one way to look at it easily, but another way that backs that is the equation that God showed me how to do this. You take 2025, the year, you split it apart and you multiply it. 20 times 25 is 500. Now you have 500. What do you do with that? Well, you look in the Strong's Concordance. What does the number 500 fall on? And in the Greek, it falls on the word, wouldn't you know, Antichrist. You can't even make that up. And this secret equation, this secret way to do this, God showed me. He just told me to do it. Now you look up the number 500 in the Hebrew, not the Greek, but the Hebrew, and it means God ascends. So now, where do we go with that? Well, by pure revelation. I just opened up the Bible a little while back, started reading, and I read in the book of Exodus at the end. Now the book of Exodus, the word Exodus means exit. And at the end of the book, you see it, and it says that the cloud, when it was on the tabernacle of Israel, in other words, when it was down on the tabernacle, God's glory was there, Israel could not move forward in their journey. It's only when the cloud ascended with the glory of God that Israel was able to move forward on their journey. And that is a picture of the church being caught up in the cloud to meet the Lord in the air, and then Israel continuing on their journey. Do you see that parallel? Remember, Isaiah 46:10, God declares the end from the beginning, and Proverbs chapter 25 verse 2 says it is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but it is the honor of kings to search out a matter. And so the Bible is full of these mysteries, and you see them through numbers, you see them through patterns, and you connect it up. God just tells you and shows you these things. And so that is where I'm at with that. 2025, absolutely, I'm convinced that is when the Antichrist will be revealed. And that is when we ascend up into the cloud to meet the Lord in the air. And there will be a continuance of 42 months, just like the book of Revelation says. And in 2029, I believe that Jesus will come back. And if you look in Psalms chapter 2, verse 9, or 29, these patterns are all over the Bible. You'll see that. He comes back. And the very next verse, Psalms chapter 2, verse 10, which is 12, which it's going to be the beginning of the 12th Shemitah from Israel becoming a sovereign nation, sovereign state again. So 2030, which is in Psalms chapter 2, verse 10, and it talks about the kings ruling on earth, and the kings of Israel. So again, these mysteries are only seen through patterns of revelation and numbers.